The morning sun, usually a bright sign of hope, did almost nothing to lift the heavy mood inside the elite vault. Every shiny marble floor, every tall glass wall seemed to hum with a silent scream of panic. The bank workers, once calm and steady, now moved like nervous ants, their quiet whispers growing louder with fear. Something serious was happening, a crisis felt but not seen, squeezing the very air from the room. This was not just a bank, it was a strong fortress, now shaking on the edge of disaster. Far away from this shining chaos, on a forgotten and wild stretch of road in Miami, a different kind of struggle was happening. A black luxury car, looking powerful and sleek, was stuck and trapped, its wheels swallowed by deep, hungry mud. Inside, a woman sat still, almost too calm for such trouble. This was Akosua. Her designer dress, simple but elegant, was now a little messy, a small act of rebellion against the disorder around her. Her driver, paid to stay calm no matter what, was anything but calm now. His face showed panic and endless apologies. Akosua watched him quietly, like she was watching a play she couldn't stop. Her shoes, made with care and skill, had shone bright until she got out of the car. Now, thick mud reached for them and stained them fast. She showed only a small flicker of disgust, a tightening of her lips as she looked at the dirty mess. She thought the bank couldn't be far. Just a short walk, she told herself. Just a small trouble. But the road had other plans. Each step was harder than the last. The mud fought against her, sticking and pulling, ruining her clean dress hem. Still, Akosua kept walking, her back stayed straight, proud and strong, her eyes fixed far ahead on the bank, sharp and full of willpower. Finally, she reached the grand building of the elite vault, a shocking picture of chaos behind its proud, perfect walls. The bank's glass doors, shiny like mirrors, showed her muddy reflection back at her. She stopped for a moment, took a deep, slow breath. This was no sign of giving up, but a quiet promise to herself. Then, with a quiet but strong push, she entered through the grand doors, leaving the wild, dirty outside behind and stepping into the cold, tense heart of power. The air inside was thick with silent rules, rules she was ready to break. Waiting there, like a cold statue, stood the bank guard. His eyes, hard and judging, scanned her, but all he saw was the mud. The air inside the elite vault was thick and heavy, like a weight pressing down on everyone's chest. It wasn't just about money or business. No, this was something deeper. A tense, tight silence filled with unspoken fears. The kind of fear that creeps in when you know the empire you built on shiny promises might be cracking. Every whisper behind polished desks, every sideways glance, every shaky breath added up to one thing: panic. And standing guard over it all was Officer Davis, the bank guard. Davis was the kind of man who looked like a wall you couldn't break, big, broad-shouldered, built like a mountain, and dressed in a perfectly pressed uniform that made him look even bigger. Just seeing him made people straighten up and think twice before stepping too close. His eyes were sharp, cold like smooth stones, scanning every face that walked through the doors. He didn't just see people, he judged them. Every little detail, from their clothes to their walk, was a clue about who belonged in this place and who didn't. In his world, there were two kinds of people: the elite, those who had the right to be here, and everyone else. And Davis took his job seriously. He was the unmovable wall between the bank's precious wealth and the messy outside world. He hated anyone who didn't look the part, anyone who carried even a hint of dirt or struggle. To him, mud on shoes wasn't just mud. It was a sign someone didn't belong. Then came Akosua. She moved quietly, with a calm and steady grace that seemed at odds with the mud splattered on her expensive dress and the small mess in her usually perfect hair. Her steps were sure, her purpose clear as she made her way to the reception desk. But before she could say a word, Davis was already there, blocking her path like a shadow. He didn't hesitate. His eyes darted down first, catching the dirty streaks on her designer shoes, then back up to her face with a look that was equal parts suspicion and contempt. His voice cut through the quiet bank lobby like a sharp knife. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said politely but icily. "This bank only serves clients with appointments." He let the words hang for a moment, then added, with a sneer that twisted his lips like a bad joke, And frankly, you don't look like you belong here." The word belong echoed like an accusation, heavy and sharp. It wasn't just about the mud or the messy dress. It was about who Akosua was, or who Davis thought she was. Someone beneath the bank's polished walls, someone unwanted. But Akosua wasn't about to let his word shake her. She met his cold stare without flinching, her face calm and unreadable. "My name is Akosua Nwamadi," she said clearly and calmly, her voice steady and strong. Davis snarled, no longer bothering to hide his frustration. "I don't care who you are. No walk-ins, especially not looking like that." He gestured sharply at the mud stains, as if they were dirt she couldn't wash off. Around them, detention thickened. Bank employees glanced nervously, then quickly looked away. No one wanted to get involved, not with Davis's fury. But not everyone was blind to what was happening. From the shadows of his private office, Caleb, the bank's young owner, watched silently. A handsome man with worry etched deep in his face, Caleb was drowning in his own crisis. The bank was on the edge of collapse, and he was heading to a meeting that could decide everything. But Davis's harsh words stopped him cold. He paused, listening. What caught Caleb's eye was not the mud or the dirty dress, but Akosua herself. Despite everything, she stood tall, with a quiet dignity that couldn't be ignored. There was something about her strength, her calm, that drew Caleb in. She didn't look like she belonged here, no, but she didn't look defeated either. She looked like someone who might just shake this whole place up. In that moment, a desperate man faced a choice: to keep drowning in his own troubles, or to reach out toward this unexpected presence. Akosua wasn't just a visitor to Caleb, she was the first sign of a new kind of challenge, a clash of worlds he thought were locked apart forever. The scene was set, not just for a meeting about money, but for a battle of wills, and maybe something more human, more real, waiting to be discovered.
The heavy silence in the bank lobby was suddenly filled with an invisible weight, the sharp sting left behind by Officer Davis's harsh dismissal. His words hung in the air like a dark cloud, thick with unfairness and silent anger. Caleb stood frozen in place, caught in the middle of this unexpected scene. The crushing pressure of his bank's looming collapse pressed down on him like a storm about to break. Yet it was not the looming disaster that held his attention now. It was her, the woman at the center of it all, Akosua. Despite the mud smeared across her elegant dress and the subtle signs of wear from her struggle, she stood tall. Her strength was quiet but unmistakable. She didn't flinch or falter under the ugly gaze of prejudice cast by the bank guard. Instead, she carried herself with a steady, calm power that struck a chord deep within Caleb's heart. A flicker of conscience he thought had been buried under the endless stress of saving his failing empire. Without thinking, driven by a sudden and fierce impulse, Caleb stepped forward. His feet moved before his mind could argue. He was the bank's owner, the last line of defense against its fall, and he would not stand for such blatant cruelty within his walls, not when every part of him was desperate for hope. His voice cut through the tense quiet like a knife, calm but firm, carrying a strength that allowed no argument. "Is everything all right here, Officer Davis?" The question landed like thunder in the silent lobby. Davis, caught off guard mid-rant, snapped to attention. The confident mask he usually wore cracked, and a deep flush of embarrassment spread across his face. For the first time, the bank guard looked vulnerable, caught in the spotlight of his own shame. He stammered, searching for words, but Caleb didn't give him a chance to recover. His focus had already shifted entirely to Akosua. Turning fully to her, Caleb's face softened, the harsh lines of stress easing into something genuine and warm. His eyes, usually clouded with worry, now held a flicker of honest regret. "My deepest apologies, ma'am," he said quietly, his voice lowering as if sharing a private moment amid the public chaos. "Please, come in. It seems my guard made a rather unfortunate mistake." His words hung in the air, a bridge spanning the gulf of prejudice Davis had tried to create. Caleb's gaze took the full picture now. The mud on her designer shoes, the faint streaks along her dress, the unmistakable signs of a difficult journey. A wave of sympathy rose unexpectedly within him. This moment wasn't just about correcting the guard's rude behavior, it was about offering kindness and respect to someone clearly in need, no matter her status or appearance. Please, Caleb continued, his hand sweeping in an inviting gesture. One of my assistants show you to our private amenities. You can freshen up before your appointment. He paused, then added, or if you prefer, you can wait in our VIP lounge. It's much more comfortable. He nodded toward a quiet corner filled with plush leather chairs and soft lighting, a sanctuary reserved for the bank's most valued clients. What he was really offering her was dignity, a chance to regain her poise and strength. And maybe, without even realizing it, he was recognizing something deeper in Akosua, something far beyond the mud and the messy hair. Akosua, who had faced the guard's cruelty with near unnerving calm, softened now. A small, almost invisible nod of thanks brushed her chin. Her eyes, deep and strong, met Caleb's. In their depths he saw no anger. Instead, there was a flicker of amusement, a spark that told him she understood the game being played and was willing to play along. She accepted his offer silently, but watched him carefully, measuring his character. Her gaze flicked briefly back to Officer Gavis, who stood stiff and defeated, the color drained from his face. The unspoken message was clear. The balance of power had shifted. At Caleb's subtle signal, a young, impeccably dressed junior assistant appeared as if by magic. With quiet professionalism, she escorted Akosua away down a side corridor, leaving behind only the scent of expensive perfume and the stunned silence of the bank guard. Caleb watched them go, feeling a mix of relief and curiosity stirring in his chest. Then he turned to Officer Davis, his calm replaced with a cold, sharp warning in his eyes. No words were needed. The look said it all. Davis understood the silent reprimand and stood still, broken but silent. Without another glance, Caleb pivoted and strode back to his office. His mind was a whirlwind of numbers and crisis, but now there was a new question weighing on him, one far more complicated than bank accounts and balance sheets. A question about who Akosua was and what she might mean for everything he thought he knew. The soft sound of running water filled the air, followed by the faint rustle of silk. A calm settled over the bank's private amenities, a sharp contrast to the tension still buzzing just outside. This wasn't just a bathroom. It was a sanctuary of marble counters, polished chrome fixtures, and soft lighting designed to help the elite restore their flawless appearances. Here, away from prying eyes and judgmental stares, Akosua was beginning her transformation. Every movement was slow, deliberate, almost ritualistic. She bent down, carefully wiping the last stubborn smudges of mud from her designer shoes. Her fingers worked with the precision of a craftsman, making sure every bit of dirt vanished without a trace. Next, she reached up, smoothing a few stray wisps of hair that had escaped her perfect style during the struggle outside. Her hands moved like they knew exactly where each strand should lie. Finally, she ran her hands along the delicate fabric of her dress, easing out the subtle wrinkles and letting the luxurious material fall in graceful folds around her. The tired, disheveled traveler was gone. In her place stood a woman transformed, a picture of power and elegance that wasn't just skin deep. She radiated a confidence so natural, so deep, it seemed to fill the room itself. Akosua wasn't just here to visit. She was a force, a billionaire investor, ready to step into the battlefield that awaited her. The quiet calm in her eyes hinted at the storm she was about to unleash. Meanwhile, across the bank, in his richly furnished office, Caleb sat trapped under the weight of his crumbling empire. His desk was cluttered with financial reports, their numbers screaming red warnings like alarms blaring in his mind. He tried to focus, hunting for any flicker of hope, but his gaze kept drifting toward the heavy mahogany door. Curiosity gnawed at him, sharp, insistent. Who was that woman? His team had been searching desperately for an elusive investor, a last-ditch savior rumored to hold the power to rescue his sinking bank. Only a name and whispers in high financial circles. Could she be the one? Then, the door opened slowly and silently.
Akosua stepped into the office, and the light seemed to catch her just right, making her glow with an almost ethereal presence, yet fully real. Caleb looked up, his weary eyes locking onto hers. For a moment, his breath caught, a subtle drop of his jaw the only sign that he was stunned. The woman before him was nothing like the muddy figure from minutes ago. This was someone from a completely different world, poised, commanding, and calm. She crossed the thick carpet toward him with a grace that bordered on regal. Her gaze didn't waver, it held his steady and clear. "Mr. Caleb's last name, I presume," she said, her voice smooth, confident, a melody with authority woven into every word. "Akosua Nuamadi." She extended a hand, perfectly manicured and firm, across the desk. It was a silent challenge. Caleb, still caught in a daze, barely registered her name before his own hand moved instinctively to meet hers. Their fingers brushed, a brief, electric contact that seemed to send a jolt through both of them. His mind spun, struggling to make sense of the sudden shift in reality. She smiled, just faintly, a curve of her lips that seemed knowing. "Thank you for your intervention earlier," she said, quietly, her tone laced with gentle irony. "Your guard," she paused, eyes flicking to the door behind them, "seemed to have a rather limited view of who belongs here." The words hung between them, a quiet accusation, but also a reveal, a moment of truth. Suddenly, the pieces clicked into place for Caleb. The polished, commanding woman sitting before him was the same mud-streaked stranger from the lobby. The shock slammed into him hard, flushing his face with deep, burning embarrassment. He, the proud owner of the elite vault, had almost let prejudice turn away his only hope. Now the true nature of their encounter was clear, and with it, a heavy, unspoken promise. This was more than a business meeting. It was the beginning of something new, something powerful and unexpected.
The room was thick with a subtle shock, an unspoken recognition that hung between them like fragile glass ready to shatter. Caleb's face flushed hot with embarrassment, the full weight of his misjudgment settling over him. His mouth opened and closed before words finally tumbled out. Awkward and fumbling, a desperate attempt to apologize not only for his guard's rude behavior, but also for his own blind assumptions. I'm so incredibly sorry, Miss Nuwadi. Officer Davis will be... Why did I let this happen? How could I have been so blind? The questions raced through his mind like a storm. This woman, she's the only hope I've got, and I almost pushed her away because of some ignorant guard and my own laziness. Akosua cut him off with a graceful, dismissive wave of her hand. Her eyes locked onto his with steady command. And just like that, the atmosphere shifted. The room no longer felt like Caleb's domain. "Let's not dwell on trivialities, Mr. Caleb's last name," she said smoothly but firmly. "Time is money, especially for a bank in distress. Let's focus on why I'm here." She's right, Caleb thought, swallowing the sting of his mistake. I don't have time to apologize. I need to prove I'm capable of saving this bank, or it's over. Without another word, she settled into the plush armchair opposite his desk, radiating quiet, undeniable authority. The power dynamic had flipped completely. Caleb was no longer the powerful owner. The disheveled woman from the lobby was now the one in control, the potential savior, and he was the man desperate for rescue. She wasted no time. Akosua's questions came fast, precise and sharp, like surgical strikes cutting straight to the heart of the matter. She wasn't interested in broad overviews or polished speeches about the bank's general health. No, she wanted specifics. "How are your revenue streams distributed across departments?" she asked, her tone calm but insistent. "What are your biggest operational costs, and where are the hidden risks? Tell me about your recent losses, not just the numbers, but the causes. What internal factors led to these problems?" Caleb tried to keep up. He reached for facts and figures, but his knowledge felt shallow. The answers he gave were coded in corporate jargon, full of vague statements and carefully rehearsed talking points handed to him by his staff. But Akosua wasn't impressed. "I can't let her see how little I actually know, how much I've let slip through the cracks," Caleb thought, panic rising. "I'm supposed to be the one running this ship. How did I lose control? Her gaze sharpened with each evasive answer. It was clear. Caleb didn't just lack detailed insight. He didn't truly understand his own bank's inner workings. He was fumbling, revealing that while he owned the elite vault, he was more figurehead than leader. Akosua wasn't only measuring the bank's financial health, she was evaluating Caleb himself, his competence, his commitment, his ability to steer the sinking ship through the storm. Her questions cut deeper than balance sheets and profit margins. She wanted to see if he had what it took to be the captain. Leaning back in her chair, a faint but knowing smile played on her lips. It wasn't amusement. It was the smile of someone who had just laid bare the truth and issued a challenge. "It seems, Mr. Caleb," she said carefully, her voice steady and filled with quiet authority, "that while you own this bank, you don't truly know it." Her words hung in the air like a verdict. She's right, Caleb thought bitterly. I'm drowning in my own ignorance. If I don't step up, this place will sink. Then her eyes locked with his, sharp and unblinking. "Here's my first test. Within the next 60 minutes, I want a detailed breakdown of your 5 highest operational expenditures, and I mean line by line." She paused to let the weight of the demand settle. "More importantly," she continued, "for each expenditure, you must explain exactly what it does for the bank's profitability. What real value does it bring?" With that, she slid a sleek pen and a crisp white notepad across the polished surface of his desk, pushing them gently toward him. The challenge was clear. No wiggle room, no shortcuts. The clock was already ticking. Caleb swallowed hard, the gravity of the moment sinking in. "This isn't just about numbers. It's about proving I belong here, that I can lead, not just own." The fate of the elite vault was no longer just numbers on a page. It was tied to his ability to truly understand the company he led and to prove it in the next hour.
The relentless ticking of the clock echoed through the room, a constant, unforgiving reminder of the impossible task Caleb faced. Each second felt like a hammer blow, driving home the pressure crushing down on him. This wasn't just a test of numbers, it was a brutal dissection of his own leadership, a merciless unveiling of everything he hadn't seen, hadn't known, hadn't dared to confront. Caleb plunged into the task with a desperate fury. His immaculate office transformed into a war room. Phones rang non-stop as he barked orders to his team, demanding reports, spreadsheets, explanations, anything that might help him piece together the puzzle before time ran out. Sweat beaded on his forehead, soaking into his designer shirt, which suddenly felt tight and stifling. His hands trembled slightly as he sifted through reams of complex data he should have known by heart. "How did I let it get this bad?" he thought bitterly. "I'm supposed to be the master of this place, but I'm barely holding the pieces together." The cold, hard truth was a bitter pill to swallow. Caleb understood so little. The intricate threads weaving the tapestry of his own bank were mostly invisible to him. He had been a figurehead, a name on the door, never truly the captain of his ship. But now those layers of complacency, inefficiency, and reckless spending peeled back like a festering wound. Every revelation was a stinging indictment of his past ignorance. Meanwhile, Akosua remained a silent, elegant presence in the room, a sphinx-like observer watching his every move. Her eyes missed nothing. Every so often she let a quiet, deceptively simple question slip out like a perfectly aimed arrow. "And what does this consulting fee truly accomplish for your direct revenue, Mr. Caleb's last name? Tell me the tangible benefits of this recurring software license beyond just existing." Her questions weren't designed to humiliate, they were precise surgical instruments. She pushed him deeper, forced him to confront uncomfortable realities he'd long avoided. Akosua wasn't seeking to break him, she was searching for a spark, a flicker of genuine analytical ability and a willingness to learn, to adapt, to truly lead. She wasn't just looking at numbers, she was staring straight into the core of his competence and commitment. Caleb tried to steady himself, forcing his mind to focus despite the chaos swirling inside him. "I can't afford to crumble now, not when everything depends on this." As minutes bled into seconds, Caleb's frantic research unearthed disturbing truths.
Budgets, once dismissed as standard operating costs, screamed of bloated waste. Redundant services, duplicated across departments, weren't just inefficient, they felt like calculated drains on resources. Vague expenditures, previously signed off without question, hinted at something darker, more sinister than simple mismanagement. A chilling suspicion clawed at Caleb's chest. Could it be, he wondered, dread rising like bile? Are the people I trust exploiting the very system I'm supposed to protect? The thought was poison, bitter and sharp. Just as despair threatened to engulf him, a sudden glimmer of hope pierced the gloom, a sharp, unexpected beacon cutting through the chaos. His eyes scanned a labyrinthine spreadsheet and snagged on a particular department's spending. The numbers were astronomically high, utterly disproportionate to the output, a sum that simply didn't make sense. There it is, Caleb thought, heart pounding, the weak link. His mind, sharpened now by Akosua's relentless pressure, grasped the anomaly. He looked up from the data, his wild desperation giving way to fierce determination. His trembling finger pointed to the offending line item. This doesn't add up, he declared, his voice hoarse but steady, the dawning realization crystallizing into a horrifying yet exhilarating truth. The puzzle was beginning to reveal its ugly picture. For the first time in weeks, Caleb felt a surge of cold, focused fury. He was finally starting to see the truth, not just the numbers, but the rot hidden beneath. He wasn't just fighting for a bank's survival anymore. He was fighting to reclaim control, to root out the corruption eating away at the heart of his empire. Akosua watched silently, her eyes unreadable, as Caleb wrestled with his newfound clarity. The clock kept ticking.
A tense, almost triumphant chord struck in the room as Caleb's trembling finger pointed decisively at the suspicious numbers. The moment lingered, then faded into a low, ominous hum, a quiet but heavy promise of the trouble those digits represented. Akosua watched him closely, a slow, knowing nod confirming his discovery. Her voice, calm and steady, cut through the charged air like steel. "Indeed," she said, unwavering. "You found the first leak, Mr. Caleb's last name." Her words landed with the weight of absolute certainty, cementing the terrifying truth Caleb had only just glimpsed. This wasn't some accidental oversight. No, this was something far worse. She leaned forward, eyes gleaming with fierce resolve. This isn't just mismanagement. This, she tapped the page with quiet authority, is a calculated betrayal, years in the making. A cancer eating away at the elite vault's very lifeblood. Caleb's chest tightened painfully. The revelation was brutal. A select few within a department had been siphoning funds through inflated invoices, phantom services, and unnecessary contracts. This silent sabotage had steadily drained the bank's wealth, a slow, unseen poison fueling its terrifying decline. It was the rot from within, the enemy inside the gates. For Caleb, it wasn't just about the money. It was a cruel illumination of his own failures, the bitter fruit of years of neglect. His rise from grass to grace was now a tumble from grace, painted in stark, unforgiving numbers. Her voice hardened, commanding the room's full attention. "Your next test," Akosua declared, "is to expose those responsible and stop the bleeding, immediately." She leaned back, eyes locked on his. "This isn't about pointing fingers, it's about action. Show me leadership. Show me you can make the hard decisions, the ones that matter most, even when they hurt." Her weight of challenge pressed down on Caleb's shoulders like a boulder. This wasn't just a financial investment. It was an investment in him, a demand for strength, accountability, and courage he hadn't known he possessed. Caleb looked at her, really looked at her. The awe he'd felt at her immense wealth began to shift, deepen into something more profound. Underneath the shimmering billions and polished elegance, he saw razor-sharp intelligence, unwavering strength, and a fierce integrity that radiated from her very presence. A subtle moment passed between them, a silent exchange of respect and understanding.
In the furnace of crisis, battling a common enemy, the cold, calculated world of finance suddenly sparked with something warmer, more human. Just as Caleb's resolve steeled, ready to dive headfirst into the colossal task ahead, a harsh, insistent buzz shattered the fragile calm. His phone. He glanced down. The caller ID flashed. Tiffany. His chest tightened. The name tasted like poison on his tongue. His baby mama, a relentless storm that promised nothing but chaos. His hand hovered over the screen, hesitation rippling across his face. But then a grim resolve settled in his eyes. He answered. Tiffany's voice came through the speaker, chillingly sweet and dripping with predatory glee. "Did you miss me, darling?" she purred. The question wasn't a query, it was a taunt. "Our little game is far from over." Her words were a gauntlet thrown, a promise of destruction lurking just beyond the horizon. Caleb's eyes widened, the hard-won determination flickering in his gaze was replaced by stark dread. For a split second, a silent plea for help crossed his face as he glanced at Akosua. The bank's financial crisis was terrifying, but Tiffany's return and her ominous threat signaled a personal war that might eclipse everything else. The chilling echo of her voice lingered in the room, then faded into a suspenseful hum.